Succession planning isn't something you plan for and execute overnight. It's not an overnight thing. You've worked hard to build your business, build it over your career, and you want to make sure that not only are you taken care of, but your family's taken care of, your community's taken care of, and even the team that's helped you build your company is taken care of. There's a lot of considerations. There's lots to think about. So where do you start? That's always the question, right? It's easy to just be in the business and have the blindfolds on and work hard. But how do you protect your wealth and make sure that your family is going to be set for the years to come? Right? This is something that all, including myself, has to go through at some point. You've heard me talk on the show about the importance of succession planning over and over again, because any business owner that doesn't address this topic, in my view, is just being irresponsible. It's something that we have to do for our customers, for our families, for our teams, for everything. So today we have the expert in this particular topic. So preparing you for your succession plan, we have Dr. Tom Deans. Now, I just saw Tom's. He spoke at our conference in Montreal. He was fantastic. I'm like, this guy has to come on our podcast. And by the way, he's no slouch. He's no amateur here. He's done over 2,000 speeches in over 28 countries on this topic. He's pretty well the preeminent thought leader on the topic of intergenerational wealth transfers. He's the guy, right? He can speak with authority because his family has actually been through it. And I'm sure he's going to tell us his story, but he sold businesses of more than $100 million. He is the expert in transitioning family wealth. Right? So where his background's coming from. He's the author of 3 books on the subject of family wealth transfers. His first book, Every Family's Business, the 12 Common Sense Questions to Protect Your Wealth. It's a best-selling family book of all time, by the way. New York Times bestseller, one of the top 10 business books business owners should read, and has sold more than 1 million copies. So imagine that. Not only does he sell these successful business, he makes all this money in books. And then there's his second book, Willing Wisdom: 7 Questions Successful Families Ask. Now, this reached number 2 on the Globe and Mail's bestseller list. Critical acclaim. And really, one of the things he really gets into is his controversial explanation of why 15 million Canadians don't have a legal will right now. And he's just released, earlier this year, The Happy Inheritor. I'd like to be a happy inheritor. So The Happy Inheritor: How Successful Families Prepare Heirs and Transfer Wealth. This is the final book in his sort of family wealth trilogy. How successful families transfer wealth with great care and joy through the use of facilitated family meetings. This brings predictability, brings transparency to their estate plans. So, Tom, you've done everything. Welcome to Turning the Page.
Great to join you, but I got to tell you, I haven't done everything. I haven't done this podcast, and I've been wanting to get on you. I'm a fan. No, you got a great audience, and having, of course, met you in Montreal and shared my message with some of the advisors there. This has been long overdue, and I'm excited to dive in.
Well, you and me both. I think this is going to be a great topic. So let's start with, of course, how I always start. Tell us your story. Everybody wants to know your story. How did you get here?
Well, totally bizarre career. It makes no sense. It's actually all a little bit of an accident. Yeah, I went to Mount Olive University undergraduate, Master University, and then went over to the UK for my PhD. And getting started, I had a career in banking as a non-banker. I was a speechwriter for the president and CEO of Scotiabank. Also worked in the government relations department. Did a whole bunch of things. Had a great job. It was my first real insight into some of the real dangers for business owners who concentrate their wealth in their business with no succession plan, who then have a couple of rough years. And I got to tell you, if your file gets kicked to downtown Toronto, it doesn't matter which bank, if it's the blue team, the red team, the gold team, you're in a world of hell. And I had a front row seat to see how those credits get decided on. And it's not a fast process. I mean, it is a fast process. All of this to say, having done that, the phone rang, and it was my father. He wanted to know if I wanted to join the family business, and it was a business that I was actually investing in. So I knew the industry, so at 37, I joined the family business, ran a family business, plastics manufacturing, for 8 years as CEO. Then we get an unsolicited offer, and I'm buying this business. I think, this is going to be like
Right. You're in.
all this business at full market value based on a third-party valuation, no discounts for family, not in our family. I'll be
Nope.
talking about that. And this offer comes out of left field, and we take it. It's a phenomenal. It's a strategic. It's a competitor who buys this, which, as you know, typically pays the most.
Right.
So there I am at 45 with a liquidity event, out of work, and I sit down one morning and I start typing, and that's about 7 in. By 3 o'clock in the morning, I typed all day and all night.
Wow.
2,000 words. And I started writing Every Family's Business, this book that is to this day still talked about and described as being contrarian, controversial. I really tackled the subject in a very different way, but it really reflected the unique culture in our family.
Right.
My grandfather had a business. My father didn't love it. That business was sold. My father starts a plastics company in 73. We sold that. I have a publishing company. I have 2 kids, 28 and 30. I asked them recently, Chris, if they wanted to risk their capital and buy my business at full market value. What do you
There's probably some chuckles, some shame faces.
Up on the forehead. No. Here's another one that is going to get sold. So I thought, you know what? I wrote that story. All of the other books on this subject have said the opposite. They've said, here's how you gather your family, work with an advisor to cultivate good communication and good engagement with the next generation so they can continue your family business. I'm thinking, what? That is just, my story. So anyone who writes a decent book is trying to convince himself of an idea. I didn't write this book to convince readers of anything. I wrote this book to convince myself that the decision we took on February 8th, 2007 to sell our family business, something we'd done 2 previous times, was the key to our financial success over the course of 100 years. And that little book took off because I think business owners were actually waiting for someone to write that book, waiting for someone to come through the door and say, hey, Bill, hey, Mary, it's high time you take care of yourself. If you don't take care of yourself financially, how are you going to take care of your family, your grandchildren? Most entrepreneurs hoard their wealth in their operating business. They keep investing their profits. They under-leverage their balance sheet, and they're in a scary place. When they move into their 70s and 80s and they've got 80% of their personal net worth wrapped up in one illiquid stock called their family business, that is insane. And it's no fun. So that's a long answer to a question. In February 2008, I started writing, I started speaking, and it took on a life of its own. First book led to the second book in 2013, 5 years between those 2 books. And then 10 years. It took me 10 years to write the trilogy, to finish the 3rd book. But I can tell you with great assurance, Chris, I'm done.
That's it. The trilogy is over.
The trilogy is done. I'm done. It took me 10 years to get this 3rd book out, and I'm so pleased that I did because I really feel like I put a bow around the whole subject of family wealth, whether it's a cottage, a business, cash, investments. I write about wealth transitioning to the next generation. I'm done.
You write about it in a practical sense. Like both you and I, we talk to people all day long about, I talk to entrepreneurs all day long, and maybe it's the wealth management business, but everything you're describing is exactly true. They don't want to give it up. They like their work. They love their clients. But to your point, is that really fair to, their family? Is it really fair to, their teams, their clients? There comes a point where you sort of, the expiry date is on, and are you doing the right thing? And I think your book really addresses that issue.
Yeah, and I think it gets at this common problem that most owners conflate their employment with their ownership. So they think, if I leave, I no longer can work. I don't know. It has nothing to do with the price of butter in Hungary. They're 2 separate issues. I tell business owners all the time, you can monetize, take some chips off the table, monetize your equity, but you can still, if you still have gas in the tank and you still want to work, and maybe you want to work 3 days a week, maybe you don't want to work in July and August, like you can design. You've earned that privilege, Mr. Owner, but it doesn't mean that you have to take your ownership to the grave and then unlock chaos.
Right.
Wealth destruction, heartbreak, liquidity problems, disasters. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? And because we don't know our expiry date, Chris, what I'm trying to do is bring urgency to this issue and say, you got to get it in front. And every day you leave this unattended, you're taking a big risk. You know, if you love to gamble, I tell business owners all the time, you love to gamble, you don't need to buy a ticket and go to Vegas. You get out, hop in your car, drive to your office. You're in the biggest casino of your life. If you're in your 60s, 70s, or 80s, and you own a business and you have no succession plan, man, you are at the table and you're rolling the dice.
Well, you're especially seeing that, I guess, and I'll use our industry. I'll do the wealth management industry, because people think it's, you know, I can do that. I just, you know, literally got off a call. Or like, oh, I can do this forever. I can do this well into my 70s. So maybe talk about why should entrepreneurial financial advisors really consider succession plan? What are those dangers, and why should they do it today? And you talked about it, but maybe elaborate a little bit more on that.
As wealth creators, we do have a duty and responsibility to understand that the wealth that we've created will impact the people that we leave it to. And and this is bizarre, but when you consider that 15 million Canadian adults don't have a will, including half of all financial advisors, they are unlikely to have, you can understand the level of chaos that is being released inside families. Including financial advisors.
Right.
Who know better. And that's actually what makes it even worse, because everyone around them thinks, holy smokes, Larry was in the business for 35 years and didn't do any of this themselves. Now, the flip side of that coin is when advisors get out in front and start to do some planning, basic estate planning and succession planning, and then start to tell those stories to their clients with great authenticity and explain, you know, the pinch points, the issues that they had to confront in their own family. These are what makes advisors really relatable. It's what projects kindness and empathy. You know, this is something that has to be done. And when it's not, let's flip that coin back over. It's people sense that. They sense that lack of preparedness, and it's selfish.
Mm-hmm.
People feel really vulnerable when their advisor doesn't have a plan. They're not dumb. People are worried how their portfolio will be managed when all of a sudden that advisor's there and there's been no well-articulated plan. So this is not something where you can be too cute by half.
Right.
You're going to get busted.
Well, also the devastating effects that when it does happen to, you know, the family, and I've, you know, over my career seen live the examples. We had one advisor, he was in his early 50s on the treadmill one morning, doing his morning exercise. As a guy who didn't drink, didn't smoke, was in the gym every day, drops dead of a heart attack on that treadmill. Of course, spouse has no clue what he really does or how his staff operates. And of course, all the people in that community, you know, certainly went after those clients. And I can tell you that 70% of that value was lost within 4 months. And, you know, the poor family, young family, the two children under the age of 10, you know, didn't have, to your point, the irresponsibility of not having something in place, or somebody even understood the business enough to take it over, you know, devastated that poor young family.
Yeah. And it's heartbreaking to watch someone who spent decades building wealth literally unravel it and destroy the value in a matter of not months, weeks and days.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't take long because of course the competitors are going to be on that like there's no tomorrow. And you don't really have much of a comeback, because even to put somebody in place from fresh takes at least 90 days for them to get up to speed, if you're very optimistic.
Yeah. I absolutely, without question. And I think the point that is often overlooked is that sense of relief and joy that revisits
Right.
an entrepreneur's life when they solve this difficult problem. It is a Gordian knot. It is a conundrum, right? It's uncomfortable. The whole subject feels dark, sad, morose. We're looking at the end of our career. I mean, I get it. But anything that is worthwhile in life takes work. And when we put that work in and we push through and we bring clarity to that succession plan, that instant sense of relief, Oh my God. And then what you see, or what I see, is advisors and entrepreneurs slapping their forehead going, oh my, it actually wasn't that hard.
Right.
And I actually feel really great that I'm going to leave my family with clarity, that I'm going to, I've got this thing in place. Then they get on with actually doing the work that they love with a new sense of purpose and energy, because they finally resolved this thing that is just always nagging away at them. How am I going to get out? Not how am I going to make more money? How am I going to get out?
When actually going to get out? Yeah. Well, let's explore this topic that you talked about, because I'm a living example of it, which is people equate selling with stopping. Right? In other words, they enjoy what they do. They love their interactions with their clients, but somehow they equate that if I take some sort of liquidity event in my business, I have to stop. And to your point, that doesn't really have to occur, right? You can have a liquidity event, but you can continue to, do the work that you enjoy doing. In my particular case, I got rid of everything I dislike doing, which was, there was a whole lot of things in that particular case. But, maybe tell us some examples of some of the things that you've seen that allow people to really do what they love and at the same time have something set in place.
Yeah, I would, I'm going to draw right on my own personal experience. I can tell you that culturally we view the seller as the vanquished. The buyer is the victor. Right? We've set it up that way. So
right.
So that if you sell, everyone we think around us that matter in our lives are going to say, well, something must have been wrong.
Right.
Something must have been broken. It must have been going down in value. And what I've been spending the last 15 years doing is flipping that around and saying, no, business owners, advisors, understand this. That is the high water mark of success. That is what you're driving to, picking the time, the place, the person, the price, like gaming it, understanding it, and driving it to its conclusion.
Right.
That has not been an easy sell, but I see it. I see a shift. I see a shift to people, understanding that in truth, and I see it. Listen, I'm a member of a golf club. I listen to reality. When business owners sell, most people are jealous because all of a sudden they see that business owner who's free to operational duties and responsibilities. They've got time, they've got money, they're light on their feet, life feels good, they're getting healthy, losing weight, they're doing fun, they just present to the world differently.
Right.
And it's a beautiful thing to watch a business owner conquer that fear of who they'll be after they sell.
Yeah, no. As I said, I can, as somebody who's been on both sides. So I bought like 26 different companies over my career. So I've seen, the other side of them getting out of that and then doing something else, or, doing the things, to your point, that they love doing. Like there's so much of being an entrepreneur. You wear so many hats at the same time. You're literally everything. You're the marketing guy. You're the IT guy. You're the HR guy. You're the psychologist of the office. You have to make every strategic decision. There's never time off, right? You're always thinking about the business. And to your point, once that transaction occurs, see these smiles on their face, the bags come out from under the eyes. As I said, you get to see all their amazing trips that they're going on. So I don't think people, to your point, now they should be equating it with success. So I think that's a good way to put it.
I think unless that entrepreneur has a compelling next act, at least ruminating. If the entrepreneur is not fantasizing, allowing themselves to indulge in that fantasy of what they would do with both time and money. Remember, when they were young, they were broke, but they had time. Now they're old, they have money, but they have no time. They're still mired in the operation. Yep. What I'm saying is when entrepreneurs can say, what would I be? Who would I be? Where would I go if I had both time and money? And then start to indulge.
Right.
And, that could be anything. That could be teaching an MBA course, practicing philanthropy, playing more golf, writing a book. Actually, don't write a book. It's a very crowded marketplace.
I'm actually writing a book. So I'm
very low margin, very low margins. Now find something. Whatever it is, they have to indulge in that fantasy. Otherwise, if there is no place to go that is more compelling, they will never leave.
So now going down a little different path, this is a conversation now that you have to have with your family members. Maybe describe that. How do you start the process? How do you start talking to your family members and the people around the business about this journey you're about to embark on? What advice would you give?
Yeah, well, my first advice would be no discounts for family. Now that's gonna sound harsh, but really that's what made this book so successful. It offers a very, very direct and powerful. I really drive a stake in the ground. The problem with the survival rate of family businesses, and in the advisory world, there's lots of
Oh my God, yeah.
mother-son teams, mother-daughter teams, mother-son teams, any combination of family. There is a lot of family involvement and what I would describe as enmeshment inside these, in the advisory world. Very common. What I would say the very first thing to do is to kind of start where I have already been, which is to disentangle this idea of, hey, you're working in the business, Junior. It doesn't mean you own it. Ownership and employment income are separate issues, but in the world of family businesses, we conflate those two. So there are next gens working in their parents' advisory practice who think, I don't know, one day, all this, fill in the blank.
Yeah. This will be mine. Yeah.
And so no one has said that, but that is what they're thinking. And
Sure.
that has always been the triggering event for the intergenerational transition of equity. We just simply had to wait for a parent to die, and then the ownership would revert to us.
Right.
Now, there's always been a deemed disposition for tax purposes, but that next generation have always received family farms, advisory practices, you felt manufacturing businesses, fill in the blank. They've always received them free. And we know that the survival rate of those free family businesses is about 30%. 70% fail between G1 and G2. And then we know that when gifted to the third generation, 10% survive. So stated differently, if you have an advisor who's listening in and they're the founder, they've got a 3% chance of their grandchildren owning and operating their business.
Good. And I've seen it, right? It's not something that this is not some wild stat. I've seen the real life thing happening.
Over and over and over. Now, this sounds kind of like an anti-family business message. It's not. What I'm saying is, if the next generation loves that business, they're educated, talented, passionate, gifted, driven, as much as their parents or even more, I describe a way in which the next generation should get the business. And it involves them purchasing the shares at full market value based on a third-party valuation. And guess what, Chris? Very few do.
Yeah, I was going to say, nobody likes that statement.
A lot of next gens like the business. They like their job. They like their salary, but they don't like this notion of taking risk. Well, if you don't take risk, you're not an owner. You don't have an owner mentality. Owners get risk. You take risk, you have a high possibility for reward. And when families skip that step, they wire their business to destroy itself.
And to that point, I've heard the different expressions. Do you have the passion or do you want the paycheck? That's the first question is, what is the most part about this business? Your passion for, let's say, wealth management, or your passion for the paycheck? The other observation, I can say this, and I've seen it before, and I had this conversation actually with an advisor. I'm like, I knew your, in this case, dad, when he was working 12 hours a day. I knew him when he was coming in Sunday. What you're seeing is now successful dad, vacationing and, and taking lots of time off and doing this. That's the lifestyle you're looking at. Meanwhile, you want to forego this 12-hour day thing over here. And to your point, the only way that you're going to get that level of commitment is fair market value for these quite valuable businesses.
Yeah. And, it really takes me to my third book which took me 10 years to write, which puts that bow around the whole subject. And that's really where I introduce the idea of facilitated family meetings, where business owners gather the next generation, their family. And I talk about it in the book on how they start to talk about how these difficult to transition assets, cottages, businesses,
Right.
things are hard to divide. Cash is easy to divide.
Right. That's simple.
Now, and there's kind of a hierarchy. People love receiving cash at the estate level. Have you ever met someone who's inherited cash and disappointed?
Yeah, I'm going, oh man, I wish this was a hard to get rid of building.
Oh, yeah. Cash people love. But I have met many, many people who have inherited cottages with 4 brothers and sisters who each have 3 kids. How are you going to jam 12 people into a 3-bedroom cottage? Like
Right.
people, we always think, the title of the 3rd book is The Happy Inheritor. There are lots of unhappy inheritors. There are lots of people who are inheriting assets like businesses, like cottages, and is bringing all sorts of complexity and, quite frankly, all sorts of litigation. The courts are absolutely jam full of families where succession planning and basic family meetings and communication were abandoned. And what are we transitioning? Chaos.
Right.
Lack of liquidity, tax liabilities, all sorts of disharmony and litigation. And it's, $300 million will be inherited today, Chris.
Right.
300 million today, tomorrow, even Saturday and Sunday. 300 million. No.
It's happening as we speak. This is real time right now. Yeah.
Not coming.
It's
real smack dab in the middle. The baby boomers born in 1948 to 1964. The leading edge is turning 76 this year. And they were absolutely masterful at creating businesses, creating wealth, saving, investing. They were scary shitless. Their parents and grandparents lived through just the most horrific 50 years on the planet. First World War, Spanish flu, Depression, Second World War. Like if you were born in 1900 and were lucky enough to see your 45th birthday, you saw nothing but horror and depravity and just I can tell you at 45 years old, you weren't sitting around waiting for an inheritance. You were just supposed to be alive, and you got down to working and you saved because you felt there was another horrific event coming. Those people told the boomers all about this. I'm a boomer. I'm born in 1962. I caught the tail end of this stuff, but I'm super saver. We mastered advanced financial concepts like spend less than you make.
Right. The big one.
The big one. The power of compounding interest. We mastered that stuff because we were terrified. There is a whole generation born after 1973 that has known, sure, there's been some economic recessions, short-lived, not particularly deep, that have no idea what that previous generation survived through. So I think family meetings become that central solution, that central way of bringing people together to start these important conversations, to contextualize and prepare heirs for the transition, hopefully, of liquid assets.
Right.
And the state has been designed that way.
Yeah, as it should. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Easy. And that's kind, decent people do this and are doing this. As Canadian, it pains me to say, we're a full decade behind our friends to the south who have been using facilitated family meetings much more aggressively. And I think primarily because they have that extra layer of taxation. They have capital gains and they have that debt estate.
Yeah.
Here in Canada, we're kind of like, I don't know. We're Canadian. We pay tax.
Yeah. And a lot of it.
It'll all work out in the end. I think everyone will be kind and fair. Well, not really.
Right.
Not really.
And that's one of the big points. The conversations that I have also I come up with, which is, what if you have more than one kid? What if you have 3 kids? What if you have 4 kids? What if you have 2 kids? One comes into the business, the other one has no interest in the business. How do you go about the fairness of the dividing of that asset? Because one obviously got a very big discount, and how are you fair to the rest of that family? And does that come up a lot?
Oh, that is an absolute number one, top 3 issue for sure. But I can tell you how we resolved that in my family. I have an older brother who was not involved in the family business, but because we had a family meeting and because he knew I was paying full market value for the shares. I mean, follow the money. I go to the bank, I take a loan, I buy my parents' shares. And now the cash for those shares now sits in their hands. Right. On their death, because we have a copy of their will, we can see that their assets are split 50-50 between my brother and myself. I am actually building wealth for my parents, which is going to be my brother's going to participate in.
Right.
My brother is my biggest champion. He's like, go, Tom, go. Go build wealth.
Yeah. He's your biggest cheerleader.
Seriously, Chris, this is why I don't do any family business consulting. I don't do any consulting work at all because I would lose my mind. If you can't read my book in 3 hours, spend a staggering $26.95, it is so simple. Do not take a shortcut with the valuation. when you ask that next generation to risk their capital and pay full market value, there is no room for jealousy or for sibling rivalry.
Right.
It's done.
Right. Right. It solves all of those problems, which are multiple, right? Which is a lot.
Absolutely. And of course, next gens are put in a position of competing with themselves. The harder they work, the more value they create for the shareholder, and they're having to buy that business at full market value. They're actually forcing them to like giddy up and go.
Right. Out of here.
Yeah. They are really, truly that good. They will actually accelerate their purchase and get to 51%. At 51%, they control the company, they control the dividend, right? They can increase the dividend, drain the equity out of the business, and reduce the cost of further purchases of the shares.
Exactly.
It's
fair for everybody.
Not that hard.
Right. And it is about fairness. It's about, equality. It's about fairness. It's about making sure that somebody has passion for the business and they want to come in and really do well with the clients. And to that point, it's not just about the paycheck. It's just not about buying Junior a paycheck and giving them, a business to run. People have spent years and years and years building these legacies. So, I think all of your advice, and anyone who hasn't read your book should read your book. And one final question. What's next for you?
Well, listen, I just turned 62. So listen, I love speaking. I cannot imagine a future where I am not on a stage. I love doing what I do. And the nice thing about this is I can do it as much as I want, when I want.
Right.
And it's a global message. 28 countries. There's just a whole bunch of places I want to get to and share this message. I'm deeply, deeply passionate about this message. To watch a business owner conquer this fear of their exit and master it and use their wealth to deepen family relationships as opposed to dividing families. It really feels like I don't know what led me here, Chris, but it's a little bit feeling a little bit weird. But I think I really see myself doing this for a lot of
well, I like it. So I'm going to go into my more rapid fire questions. What's the most memorable client interaction you have ever had where you've actually, because of your advice, something has happened?
Oh my gosh. I took a question from an audience after a keynote where a guy stood up and said, I heard you speak 5 years ago. I read your book. I sat down with my father, went through the 12 questions. We realized that I didn't want to buy the business. We sold the business. My father made a fortune. I made some money from that transaction. I'm doing something I love. And now I play golf with my father every Saturday and we're loaded. Thank you so much.
Right. That makes it all worth it.
And the place went nuts. And that's for a speaker, for an author, man, that doesn't get any better than that.
And my very last question, I could go all day. I think we're going to have to bring you back because, as I said, this is one of my favorite topics. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best piece of advice? It was from David Chilton, who, by the way, you'll remember that Willing Wisdom only got to number 2 on the Golden Nail. Yeah, I could never knock the wealthy off. Never got there. But no, I sat down, a mutual friend put us together early on when I was halfway through my first book. And he said, you need to decide right now. Do you want to be a consultant? Do you want to be a speaker? Right. You can't be both. You'll be okay at both. But if you want to be exceptional, you have to decide now. What a great piece of advice. I'm never conflicted with my audiences. When advisors hire me to speak to their clients, I'm not looking for work. My job is to make that advisor look extraordinary and offer solutions for those people to engage with their advisors, to go further and faster with their planning. That was David Chilton. I'm so grateful for that early advice 15 years ago.
I like it. Focus. So this has been great. Dr. Tom Deans, my little rant is just, it's all about fairness. Every business owner, as I started this whole talk with, would be irresponsible not to put ultimate succession planning as the forefront. You owe it to yourself, you owe it to your family, you owe it to your clients, you owe it to your team. Everybody should know what that next step is. And by planning it and having those open and honest and transparent conversations with your family, you can really go far. And I like, because as I said, as somebody who has actually gone through this process, I've gone through it on both sides. I've been a buyer of businesses and I've been a seller of businesses. the sense of relief, the sense of calmness in your life when you know what you're doing and you know why you're doing it and you know that your family's going to be taken care of. So I think you're doing great work, Tom. You have a noble cause that I think everyone can get behind. So any final words for our audience?
Yeah, don't wait for the movie. Read the book.
Definitely read the book. And if you don't know where to go get the book, you just come to me and I'll find you the book and I'll send it to you. So thank you so much for being part of Turning the Page.